Anandakaram Brashanam Jnaneshwarupam Nidyabodarupam.
Hello, and a hearty Texas welcome to all our listeners. I'm Mark Smith-Eisler, and I'm joined by my co-host and partner of 24 years, partner in many things, Maitri Smith-Eisler. And this is the very first inaugural podcast of Life on the Path of Kriya Yoga. Now, in these podcasts, we're going to be exploring with many Kriya Yogis what it means to be on this path of self-realization as guided by the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda and inspired by his direct disciple, Swami Kriyananda, and also founder of many Ananda spiritual communities and centers around the world. You'll be hearing from many perspectives about the spiritual journey, the ups, the downs, the joys, the challenges, the long and winding road, and from a variety of sources, young, old, different cultures and backgrounds. We hope to bring insights to you and an understanding of how these teachings of Yogananda's are applied in practical everyday life and keep us God-centered in all our activities. And we are so happy that our very first guest is a dear friend to Ananda, Texas, international teacher, Ananda minister, and now author, Darshan Loticius. Dutch by birth, Darshan now lives in an Ananda community located in Assisi, Italy. He came to this path at the tender age of 24 and holds degrees in music and literature. The father of 2 children and regularly travels throughout Europe and the US, sharing the teachings of Kriya Yoga through seminars and music. He'll be joining us here in Dallas the week of May 13th through May 19th, and more about that later. So welcome, Darshan.
Good to be with you, Mark. Good to be with you, Maitri, dear
So
friends.
good to see you, my friend. So since this is our inaugural podcast, and because the title is Life on the Path of Kriya, I have a few questions first around those that particular area. First, how would you define a spiritual path, and do we need one?
That's a very good question. So, a spiritual path, I think, is a growth process that leads us from a consciousness that is conditioned by the conditions, by the situations, the traps of the body, all the limitations of the material life, to the awareness of spirit and the freedom that that awareness brings and the boundless creativity and joy that it brings. And it needs to be integrated. Now, Paramahansa Yogananda used to say that everybody is on a spiritual path, because when you are born into a physical body, there is always something within you that remains unsatisfied until you try to find your main source of nourishment from that spiritual level, on that spiritual level, from spirit. So I think while on the one hand, not everybody needs a specific spiritual path because people may simply not be ready for that, I would say that everybody in any case is on a spiritual path. It's like saying in the American Declaration, it says the pursuit of happiness. Everybody is, trying to pursue happiness. So everybody is on a spiritual path.
So how would you define the path of Kriya Yoga?
So there we go from a very universal, a very universal description like we just had, to something much more specific and much more also, I would say, individual and intimate. So Kriya Yoga is a pranayama technique that requires careful preparation. It requires also certain inner attitudes that need to be, confirmed, affirmed, that need to be steady, at least up to a point. And then there is this particular technique of pranayama. Pranayama means that you have realized or are realizing gradually that your physical body is really made of energy. And there are many exercises, forms of discipline that Yogananda gives to nurture that realization, that awareness within us. So we know that material matter is really compressed energy. This is what Einstein has shown to us like as early as 1905, I think. So if matter is energy, then our bodies are also made of energy, because our bodies are made of chemical elements, just like everything else. And so this gives us access. So we go from body awareness with all its limitations, we go to energy awareness. And then from energy awareness, by using the breath in a particular way, by using concentration in a particular way, and through the connection with a guru, we move from energy awareness to awareness of the presence of spirit in our bodies, in our nervous system, in ourselves. That is Kriya Yoga.
And how did you come to the path of Kriya Yoga?
It went very natural. I was a spiritual seeker even as a child. I was not born in a religious family, but there were many questions that I asked myself and my father, even as young as, when I was only 7 or 8 years old. And then there was a break during the adolescence. And when I was like 17 or something, I visited a church in Rome, and the whole, and what it did to me first was devotion. So an upward movement of energy from my heart, like you use not only your powers of philosophy, your intellect, but your feeling to expand your consciousness, to uplift your consciousness. And that made me wonder, and it made me start a talk with the universe. And I started asking questions. And when we ask questions to the universe answers, I think to the degree of our own sincerity. So my questions became more and more sincere. And then I made 2 discoveries at the same time. One was a picture of my guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, and the other one was his autobiography. So those were together. I also discovered that Yogananda spoke about Christ consciousness. So I could feel that he was a bridge between Christ and the East. And on the other hand, I started listening to audio recordings of who then became my most influential friend and teacher, Swami Kriyananda. And those 2 things happened together. And through that friendship, which was based on on supporting each other's growth, spiritual growth, I came onto the spiritual path.
Wonderful.
Oh,
Thank you
that's
for that.
beautiful. I have, I'm going to interject here one more question along these lines. This is a pop quiz. We didn't give this to you prior, but it's our version of the Stephen Colbert questionnaire. And so I would like you to just define your relationship to the path of Kriya Yoga in 5 words.
Okay, so enthusiasm, devotion, willpower, practice, and experience.
Beautiful. You are now known as a Kriya Yogi.
Not that there is any doubt, of course. So let's launch into the book now. So the title of your book is Awakening the Natural Love of the Heart, and it's based on the writings of Swami Sri Yukteswar. Can you share more about who he is and your relationship to him?
Swami Sri Yukteswar became particularly famous through the book written by his disciple, the great yoga master Paramahansa Yogananda. in that book, he's mentioned like in the second sentence. First sentence says something like, the most salient features of Indian culture has long been the search for ultimate verities and the concomitant disciple-guru relationship. And then he says, my own path led me to a Christ-like sage whose beautiful life is now, I think he says, chiseled for the ages. And so the real, I think that in many ways, the real main character in Yogananda's bestseller autobiography of a yogi is Swami Sri Yukteswar, who is, who comes fully alive in that book as a presence, which is both human and also at the same time, there's just so much light and upliftment in his words, in his, in the stories about his life, in the stories about Yogananda's discipleship, the years that he spent in Sri Yukteswar's ashram. So, and then Sri Yukteswar, of course, what really, I think, makes a true guru is his teachings and the degree to which that those teachings help other people to reach the same or similar levels as their guru. And so Sri Yukteswar's teachings are really exposed beautifully in Autobiography of a Yogi. Sri Yukteswar, we hear him speak himself. We hear him speak literally. He is quoted not just Master said that, but Master said and then direct speech, not reported speech. So we hear his voice. We feel his presence in that book. And then in the second factor is that Sri Yukteswar himself was the author of an important book, which is called The Holy Science. And that book too is, it's very difficult. It would never have become really worldwide known as it is now without Autobiography of a Yogi. But by now, many students on the path of Kriya Yoga feel at some point that they want to read that book and give it a try. And it's a thin book, it's only 100 pages, 110 maybe, but it is filled with light, with power, and with a very original language. And even though I myself cannot say that I understand even, maybe 10% of it, I feel nourished when I read it. And that's the real reason. I don't need only intellectual understanding. But when I read his words, somehow something within me feels nourished. Yeah.
Is that why you felt inspired to write on Sri Yukteswar?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that just happened. I don't know why. At a certain point I started writing articles, also on our website. Also because there's many pages in the Holy Science are quite difficult, but there is one page or one, like 3 or 4 paragraphs that are easier to read and also that are really stimulating, accessible, let's say, for everyone in modern society, I should say, not Western society, but modern society, people who want to work on themselves, people who want to overcome their limitations, can, through introspection, realize what Sri Yukteswar describes in those pages about the natural love of the heart. So I started writing articles, and then I got the idea to propose a book based on those articles to Crystal Clarity, which is, Ananda's most important publisher. And the people there, the directors there, Narayan and Dharmadevi, were very enthused about the idea. And so I started working on the book.
Well, I'm wondering, how does awakening the natural love of the heart come into play with the spiritual path and in life in general?
Well, one thing that is important to remember is that Sri Yukteswar himself says that without this love, you cannot make any progress in life. There are many things that prevent the deeper feelings of the heart, but also I would say a power that lies hidden deep in our hearts from manifesting in our lives. And spiritual awakening means that we try to remove those obstacles, all those things that prevent the heart from manifesting its full potential. So the love that is described in that book is not just a sentiment. It's not just, the love we feel for our children, for our partner, for our parents, for our friends. It's much more than that. It is a power. It is a connection with universal love. Sri Yukteswar speaks about love as the power of attraction, and not attraction to outward things through the senses, but attraction towards the source of everything that exists, attraction towards spirit. So when we connect with that attraction, then with spirit, I should say, then that heart opens and the attraction becomes manifest, and then we are in an upward spiral towards enlightenment. But without, to the degree in which that power manifests, can we realize what is really beautiful in ourselves, what is really joyful within ourselves. And again, it's not just that is a part of love. The personal love that we have for people is a part of it. But the more you connect with that greater love, the more you manifest it in your life, and just good things happen. People around you feel loved by you, even though you don't know why, because you're not, paying any particular energy, putting any particular energy into loving people. You have put your energy into awakening that love in your heart, and then the rest comes by itself. Good things happen.
So the book is really about diving deep into this expansive love that many of us, especially if we haven't even been consciously looking on a spiritual path, might be confused with, love, how is this different? But that's what the book is about, is really exploring that, and then those impediments that keep us from feeling that expansive love. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. Yeah, that's correct. So you work on that through introspection, and the book gives strategies of introspection, ways you can introspect. And so it has a lot of spiritual psychology or directional psychology in it. And when you do that, you focus your mind on doing that, on doing introspection, then the heart opens and it rejoices. And it's a process. So it's not that you're only happy once you've reached the goal. You're also happy in the process. Because when the heart, even though the ego doesn't always like it, the mind doesn't always like it, but if you use the mind to work on removing these impediments, then the heart rejoices. And when the heart rejoices, everything within us rejoices.
You touched on spiritual psychology. How is that different from traditional psychology, would you say?
Well, there are many new currents in psychology that are probably also, that have a lot in common with what I'm thinking of. But traditional psychology, when we think of Freud and Jung, overemphasize the power of the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind is a very important part of our consciousness, and we need to understand how it works. But we do not need to get stuck in the diagnosis. So just to give you an example, you have some childhood trauma, okay? So you get some psychotherapy, and that's a good thing. You find out what it is, so you can verbalize it, you can talk about it, what happened when you were a child. You can talk about it. But then there comes a moment in which, when you continue to focus on it, there will be no expansion. You will get stuck, and that is traditional psychology, where you affirm the complexes, you affirm the traumas after you've diagnosed them. Whereas spiritual psychology says, okay, so there's trauma, that's what happened, okay? And let's see how we can focus now on what heals it. So to give you a very simple example, well, simple, it's actually dramatic and beautiful and powerful. Yogananda had suffered a severe childhood trauma. His mother died when he was only 9 or 10 years old, I think. And that was trauma. And he doesn't mince words. He said it was, I love my mother and like nothing else in the world, and the world seemed to me bereft of meaning without her eyes. So he accepted that pain completely. But then what did he do? He started praying. He focused not on the pain itself, but starting from the pain, he started praying to his divine mother. So he focused from the earthly mother, he started focusing on the divine mother. And he said it took years, maybe 4 or 5 years. And then that divine mother from within answered him and healed his wounds. So I look at spiritual psychology, first of all, as directional. So you ask yourself the question, am I going in the right direction with this? Or am I being stuck? Okay? It's a little bit like a navigation system. Eh? If the destination you put in your system is inner freedom, joy, and love. Okay, so you program your navigation system, and then you start driving, and he says, turn right, and you turn left. Okay, you don't turn right, you turn left. All the navigation system does is not like, hey, you sinner, you didn't do what I told you, now you go to hell forever. No, what does the navigator do? It recalculates. Okay, it recalculates, and then you try to follow the new directions, and maybe you still are stubborn and you go in some other direction. But it is a process in which you are not so much focusing on your errors or on your traumas or complexes, even though they may be there, and you accept them and you acknowledge them, but you focus on where you're going.
So Darshan, in part 2 of the book, you talk about what Sri Yukteswar termed the 8 meannesses of the heart, and being impediments to awakening the heart's natural love. And usually when we think of meanness, that kind of implies if somebody's being mean to you, they're purposely trying to inflict pain on you, to hurt you. What did Sri Yukteswar mean by meannesses of the heart?
It's a nice play of words. What did he mean with mean? Or meanness, yeah. So I know of another meaning, but here we go into American or British English. Another meaning of mean is the opposite of generous. Is that correct, also in American English? He's mean means he's not generous. He sits on his money, he sits on his wealth, he sits on his privileges.
Yeah.
Privileges.
Yeah, because you hear the term like a mean beggar or a mean miser or something like that.
So I'm thinking of meanness the way he uses it, not so much in wanting to inflict harm on others. I think more that it is extreme contraction. So, for example, a lack of generosity brings expansion because you're including, other people in your own experience. You give from yourself, you give from your food, you give from your money, you give from your love, and you're involving other people, and so you are expanding. Meanness is the opposite. It contracts, and you consider basically everyone around you a potential menace to, potential thief of your happiness and your wealth and everything. So I think it is more like that. But I have to admit, of course, that he's chosen that word. I've also heard other interesting other people commenting on it, like impediment. I like that word a lot. And someone else, and I can't remember who it was. Because I think it was on the production page of my book, maybe, or someone wrote an introductory text or something. He said tensions. Because what is meanness? If meanness means the opposite of generosity or the opposite of kindness, okay, it means that you hold on to a limited reality, to your own limited reality. You hold on, you clamp, is that a word? Like you go like this, you're very attached. Attachment is a form of tension. And detachment is a form of relaxation. So when you speak about these tensions in the heart, I was thinking, when you're just a very mean person, in a way that's easier, because it's just clear, you're mean, you don't want to share anything with others, you're very proud of yourself, of your family, you're a declared racist, all those things. You're mean. Oh, that's clear. Okay. But if you are in a process of where you really want to work on yourself and you long to open this heart and allow that love to manifest, then it becomes all so much more subtle. And like to give you an example, racism, right? So one of the tensions, let's call them tensions right now, the tensions of the human heart is racial prejudice. That's how Sri Yukteswar defines it. So, and I've come to realize when I was writing about that, and I didn't write it in my book, so I need to write another book maybe. But what I came to realize, racism basically means that you judge a person on his appearance. So it's not only the color of the skin. So this comes literally, and not the contents of his character. So it comes literally from Dr. King, who said, where we judge people according no longer for the color of their skin, but for the contents of their character. So, but you can expand that meaning and say it's not the color of it's just outer appearance. Whenever someone walks in and he has a physical, there's something about his body or her body that you don't like and you react, that's racism. Because you're relating not to that person's consciousness or the content of that person's character, but to that person's outer appearance. So, in any case, if you want to overcome racial prejudice, and I found a very nice quote with that one. Let me see if I can find it right away. Just a second, please. Pride of pedigree, racial prejudice. I found a woman, her name is, Leoma Oluo. Well, she's an African-American writer. And she says, the beauty of anti-racism is that you don't have to pretend to be free of racism to be anti-racist. Anti-racism is the commitment to fight racism, wherever you find it, including in yourself. And it's the only way forward. So what I was saying is that when you long to open this heart, to free this heart from all this nonsense that oppresses it, and that manifests as tensions and attachments, then it can become a very subtle type of introspection. You need to be ready to be very honest. You need to develop a lot of calmness so that you can become more intuitive about yourself. And self-honesty, you have to be very honest with yourself. And there are quizzes, for example, about racism, where people who would never define themselves racist, and they do the quiz and they turn out to be racist. So it's very subtle. And when you look at it as tensions, the 8 tensions of the heart, then you can also look at it as relaxing, freeing the heart of all those tensions. And when the heart is completely relaxed, it is itself. It can be what it really is, and that is divine love.
Right. And of course, we don't want to focus too much on the 8 tensions, and we'll call them tensions. But what are those 8 tensions? Can you just list them for us?
Why? That's a tricky question. I always forget. Anyway, no, I've got them here. I've got them here. Hatred, shame, fear, grief, condemnation, race prejudice, pride of pedigree, and a narrow sense of respectability, or also called smugness.
So,
It's a lot of work to
in
do.
your
Huh?
book, oh, absolutely. In your book, in each of the chapters about these 8 tensions, you have told some very personal stories about issues that you had in your own life that led you to some understanding of what that was all about, and developing your own definition of what true love is. I'm wondering if also writing this book was a real growth experience for you, and a healing experience in going through all these meannesses.
It was because, first of all, it was a very happy experience because, I think true writing means that you offer yourself as a channel for some higher inspiration, and you do it simply. It's not like it's always good to understate these things, but that's what you try to do. And then, if I can start from just some, from what my own experiences, and then I can say, okay, and then I can use them to explain these, or to at least illustrate these deeper teachings. There's a lot of healing in that. It's like when you look at it from the anatomy of yoga, okay? In the anatomy of yoga, they speak about the spinal centers or chakras. And a lot of what yoga and Kriya Yoga is all about is that the energy that is stuck in the lower chakras gets released and can flow upwards and then focus here. But a lot of emotional trauma, emotional dynamics, psychological kinks, etc., are mostly in the lower chakras. Because the first years of our life, 2 or 3 decades of our lives, we are children of our parents. And our parents give us physical life. And what I'm going to say now is not so nice, but they also give us, therefore, physical death, right? So the first, a child depends on his mother for milk, his mother's body, his mother's warmth, and then of the father, and they have physical learning to walk, learning to eat, and that is all building up the first chakras, the lower chakras. Along with that, we take on a lot of our parents' energies, and that maybe don't really belong to our soul. So when a lot of those past experience, to get back to my own life, a lot of things that I went through in my own life, somehow being able to talk about them from this higher perspective, it's like that the energy from the lower chakras flows up and it activates the heart, and also this throat chakra, which they say in yoga is all about expansion and calmness. And you can speak about things from a perspective of wisdom, from a perspective of joy, and especially of deeper understanding and compassion. So you're no longer plagued, tortured by the emotional restlessness that certain negative experiences can leave in our system.
I just want to comment that it just strikes me that, we're all, many of us are, disturbed by the circumstances in the world today. And we do talk about, as yogis, the change begins with us. And I think it's beautiful when we realize that with our awareness, and we work with this energy of the heart and the different impediments and freeing ourselves of that, the compassion that arises from that, and as you were saying, sort of our energetic self that just is what helps to heal the wounds in others, or at least soften their hearts, because it seems like we're barricaded. Our hearts are so barricaded and contracted, as you were saying. And what gets us to open? And it's usually the interaction of some compassionate act. And you did describe those in your book too, and I was really touched by that. So I just say that, in that this is important work for ourselves, our own healing, but also for the healing of the planet in that sense, because we're doing it on a deeper level, the spiritual psychology aspect of it, and then being able to just offer that, sort of the wounded healer, and just our beingness. It can be a remedy, a sure remedy for many of the ills that and we all have people in our lives that, have very contracted hearts, and in the fear and all those impediments. And that's a challenge for us, and a calling, I think, for all of us. I just wanted to say that. So, um, you mentioned in there, then in the section of your book on page 116, that there is no need to make dramatic changes. And I wondered if you could, um, just address that maybe a little bit, or read that section, because I thought it was really beautifully written. It's nice to hear the words of an author too, being read.
That starts with, do you recall? Or does it start with, and all this can occur quite exactly where you, oh yeah, okay. And all this can occur exactly where you are. There's no need to make dramatic changes in your life, such as withdrawing from the turmoil of the world to become a hermit or a monk. That expression of spirituality largely belongs to the past. You can stay where you are and create a space in your heart where no one else enters except you. Here, you can return at any moment of the day, if only for a few minutes, and ask yourself, what is wise in this situation? You can regulate your breath, cool your nervous system, and gain some perspective. Whatever your role in society, these teachings remain available to you and can be practiced within the sovereign domain of your own mind. So, this is not completely true, because we do suffer, there is a saying in yoga, which most of the viewers probably know. It says that environment is stronger than willpower. And so it is important for us to also apply that search for wisdom, that question, what is wise, also in our choice of company that we keep. And that is the big secret, of course, of our own spiritual community, Ananda Sangha, is that we have like a family of souls, we are devoted to the same shining goal, to reach the same shining goal, and that does play an important role. But of course, my book is not only written for people who already have that. It's also written for people who feel like they are constantly being under stress. The stress of circumstances, the stress of other people, the stress of, family issues, issues at work, financial issues. And what I'm saying, and what Sri Yukteswar teaches us, is that we must, it's very important for us, let's put it that way, to develop at least that amount of discipline that is able to say stop. When I'm going into a reactive process of emotions that can take me God knows where, but far away from my own inner happiness in my heart, then I need to develop the capacity to say stop and sit down and consider. and like I said, regulate the breath, do some meditation, learn a meditation technique. There are a lot of good teachers around. You can learn it. And then through that capacity to withdraw within yourself, something within your magnetism will change. And you will attract other people who also like that. You will meet them either in your yoga class, or you will meet them through books that you read, or maybe a public speaker who comes. You can also learn about it if you come to our conference, to our
Well, that's what I wanted to say, because there's so many more questions we could ask, and we are running out of time. What can we expect from your upcoming workshop? It's going to be on Saturday, May 18th, here in our Ananda Sangha House in Richardson,
And I
Texas.
believe you're also presenting a similar workshop in other communities as well. Is that true?
I am, yeah. I'm presenting in Ananda Village, and then first at Ananda Sacramento. That will be on May 3rd, and then in Ananda Village. I have the date on my computer, but okay. And then there will be a weekend in Ananda Palo Alto, and that will be the weekend of May 10th. So when you work on this book, when you work on the overcoming the meannesses, and you work on it together through exercises, and maybe you break up in groups, and there's a lot of fun in that, and people gain just a lot of perspective. I think spirituality has a lot to do with perspective, because it has to do with how do we relate to objective reality. And on a lower level, our first reaction is just, turmoil, fear or anger or whatever. But if we dedicate time, space, and if we look for teachers and teachings that can help us to gain more perspective, then we become freer. And when you do that together, so we focus on these 8 meannesses, and just we're going to be very, do some self introspection, and then share whatever we want to share. And also we focus on those stages of the heart, which is the dark heart, the propelled heart, the steady heart, and the devoted heart. And those are, you might say, growth stages. And so where we can see if we're growing, basically. Because I think the greatest joy that the human heart can experience is the joy of growing as a human being.
Any thoughts about writing a companion workbook?
That's a good question. I'm not sure yet, Mark. I'm not sure. Maybe.
Okay.
There's a few
Well,
other.
Let's get the first stage out and get that rolling along before we
See how
think
this
about
goes.
that, right?
Yeah.
So, what do you think about closing with him reading that paragraph on page
Yeah,
129?
page 129.
And you could
Uh,
close us out with that. We just so appreciate, we're so looking forward to you coming.
So that is written by Sri Yukteswar himself.
Right, the words
Yes,
of Sri Yukteswar in
yes.
closing.
Those are very powerful. Very powerful. Yeah, I'd love to end with that. That's a brilliant idea. Thank you. Okay. So this is actually the beginning of Sri Yukteswar's book, The Holy Science. And you might understand some of it, or you might understand a lot of it. But I think that if you listen with your eyes closed, and you try to feel the vibration that's behind it, you will feel certainly inspired by it. So Sri Yukteswar, Swami Sri Yukteswar writes, man possesses eternal faith and believes intuitively in the existence of a substance of which the objects of sense, sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell, the component parts of the visible world, are but properties. As man identifies himself with his material body, composed of the aforesaid properties, he is able to comprehend by these imperfect organs these properties only, and not the substance to which these properties belong. The eternal Father, God, the only substance in the universe, is therefore not comprehensible by man of this material world, unless he becomes divine by lifting himself above this creation of darkness or Maya. And then Sri Yukteswar quotes from Hebrews, the Bible, St. Paul, who says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." And then Sri Yukteswar also quotes Jesus in John 8:28. "Then Jesus said unto them, When you have lifted up the Son of Man, then shall you know that I am he."
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Darshan. And thank you so much for helping to bring Sri Yukteswar's writings into a realm where it's a little more accessible. I think you've done a wonderful work, and I've enjoyed your book very much. And I'd like to thank you so much for joining us today. And I'd also like to thank our listeners for listening or viewing today, whatever you happen to be consuming this podcast on. We hope that you'll join us again for our next episode, which will be out hopefully in a couple of weeks. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Maitri.
Bye.
And I'm very much looking
you soon.
forward to seeing you all soon. Yes.
Yes.
All right. And
Blessings.
once again, that date for our friends in Texas for Darshan's workshop is the 18th of May. If you happen to be here a little bit earlier, we have a few other activities going on starting on Thursday and then going through Sunday. You can find all that information on our website at anandatexas.org. So thank you all.
Sangat